Imagine discovering that something modern science is still struggling to fully understand, despite supercomputers, billion-dollar laboratories, and advanced technology, was already known by medieval people centuries ago, without electricity, without machines, and without formal science as we define it today. This isn't a fantasy or a conspiracy, but a forgotten truth buried in history, because medieval societies understood how to live in harmony with the human body and the natural world in ways we are only now beginning to rediscover. From buildings that stayed warm in extreme cold, to diets that strengthened immunity, to daily routines that aligned perfectly with human biology. While modern life, ironically more advanced, has left us exhausted, unhealthy, and disconnected, for generations we dismissed these people as primitive, calling their era the Dark Ages. Yet modern research is slowly proving that many of their methods were not backward at all, but deeply intelligent, sustainable, and biologically sound, raising an uncomfortable question. Did progress make us smarter, or did it make us forget what truly worked? In this video, we uncover the medieval secret that challenges everything we think we know about history, health, and technology. And by the time you reach the end, you'll realize that modern science isn't leading the way forward. It's racing to catch up with what medieval people already understood. For centuries, we've been told a simple story about the medieval world, that it was crude, ignorant, dirty, and dangerously uninformed. A long pause between the brilliance of ancient civilizations and the enlightenment of modern science. We call it the Dark Ages, a time when humanity supposedly forgot how to think, how to build, and how to understand the world. But what if that story is wrong? What if medieval people weren't ignorant at all, but deeply observant, highly practical, and quietly brilliant in ways modern science is only now beginning to recognize? Because hidden beneath layers of mockery, misunderstanding, and historical bias lies an uncomfortable truth. Medieval societies understood fundamental principles about human health, architecture, food, and survival that modern civilization ignored for centuries and is now desperately trying to rediscover. Long before laboratories and peer-reviewed journals, medieval people lived close enough to nature to notice patterns. We lost the moment we separated ourselves from the natural world. They didn't have microscopes, but they had something else: continuous, generational experimentation. Knowledge wasn't written only in books, it was carved into buildings, embedded in diets, passed through daily rituals, and refined over hundreds of winters, famines, plagues, and climate extremes. Survival demanded accuracy. A bad idea didn't just fail, it killed. And ideas that worked survived, quietly evolving into systems so effective they lasted centuries without revision. Take medieval architecture, for example. Modern buildings rely heavily on electricity, insulation foam, gas heating, and complex climate control systems, and yet they fail spectacularly during power outages, extreme cold, or heat waves. Medieval buildings, by contrast, were designed around thermal mass, airflow, orientation to the sun, natural insulation, and local materials. Stone walls several feet thick weren't a sign of ignorance, they were a thermal strategy. Earth-sheltered structures, turf roofs, lime plaster, and wooden frameworks weren't aesthetic accidents. They were the result of lived experience in harsh climates. Today, modern engineers call this passive design. Medieval people simply called it building. Modern science is now spending billions studying what medieval builders already knew intuitively, that stable indoor temperatures come not from constant energy input, but from working with physics rather than fighting it. Thermal lag, humidity balance, breathable walls, these concepts appear in medieval construction manuals centuries before they appear in modern textbooks. The irony is staggering. What we consider green or sustainable today was once just common sense. The same forgotten wisdom appears in medieval diets. We often imagine medieval food as bland, unsafe, or nutritionally poor, yet archaeological and historical evidence tells a very different story. Medieval diets were seasonal, local, and unprocessed by necessity. Fermented foods were common, not as health trends, but as preservation methods that unintentionally supported gut health. Bread was often sourdough, not because it was fashionable, but because wild fermentation made grain digestible and nutritious. Bone broths, organ meats, raw dairy, and slow-cooked stews were staples, foods now praised by modern nutrition science for their density of bioavailable nutrients. Compare that to the modern diet, ultra-processed, shelf-stable, chemically preserved, and nutritionally diluted. We eat more calories than ever before, yet suffer from deficiencies medieval people rarely experienced. Today, scientists talk about microbiomes, nutrient absorption, and inflammatory foods. Medieval people didn't know these words, but their food culture respected these principles naturally. Once again, modern science isn't inventing something new. It's rediscovering something old. Even medieval daily life followed rhythms modern biology now insists are essential. They woke with the sun, slept with darkness, worked in cycles, rested seasonally, and respected physical limits. Chronic stress, the silent killer of modern life, was rare, not because life was easy, but because it was aligned with human biology. There were no screens hijacking circadian rhythms, no artificial lighting destroying sleep cycles, no constant information overload. Today, neuroscientists warn us about burnout, dopamine addiction, and nervous system fatigue. Medieval people avoided these problems not through knowledge, but through lifestyle design. And perhaps the most shocking realization of all is this: medieval people didn't separate technology, health, and nature. They treated them as one system. A house wasn't just shelter, it was climate control. Food wasn't just fuel, it was medicine. Daily labor wasn't just work, it was movement, exercise, and social structure. Everything served multiple purposes, reinforcing resilience rather than fragility. Modern systems, by contrast, are hyper-specialized and dangerously dependent. When one piece fails, everything collapses. This is why modern science keeps catching up. Not because medieval people were more intelligent in a raw sense, but because they lived inside feedback loops we broke. We outsourced survival to machines and lost direct understanding of how things truly work. Now, faced with climate crises, health epidemics, and energy instability, we are turning backward, not out of nostalgia but out of necessity. The uncomfortable question is no longer whether medieval people were ignorant. The real question is whether we became arrogant and mistook technological complexity for wisdom. Because history is quietly reminding us of something we forgot, progress doesn't always move forward. Sometimes, it circles back to the truths we left behind. And as we go deeper into this forgotten medieval knowledge, an even more unsettling pattern begins to emerge, because the further modern science advances, the more it unintention. Ally validate systems medieval people relied on every day, especially in medicine, where healing was not isolated to pills and chemicals, but embedded into environment, routine, and prevention. Medieval medicine is often mocked for bloodletting and superstition, yet historical records show that many treatments were shockingly effective when stripped of later exaggerations, relying heavily on herbal compounds now proven to contain antibacterial, anti-inflammatory, and antiviral properties, such as garlic, honey, willow bark, and fermented plant extracts. Substances modern pharmacology eventually rebranded, refined, and patented centuries later, while medieval healers understood something modern healthcare struggles with even now, that the body heals best when supported holistically. Rather than attacked aggressively, they prioritized rest, warmth, nutrition, clean air, and community care. Recognizing that illness was not merely an isolated malfunction, but a signal of imbalance between the body and its surroundings. A concept modern medicine is only recently revisiting through functional health, lifestyle medicine, and systems biology, which quietly echo medieval principles under new scientific language. The same pattern appears in medieval cities, which were not chaotic accidents, but organically evolved systems designed for resilience, walkability, and human-scale living, with dense layouts that reduced energy waste, narrow streets that regulated temperature and wind flow, mixed-use spaces that eliminated long commutes, and local production that minimized dependence on distant supply chains. Features now praised by modern urban planners trying to undo the damage caused by car-centric, energy-hungry megacities vulnerable to collapse at the slightest disruption. Medieval tools and technologies further reveal this hidden intelligence. Windmills, watermills, mechanical clocks, cranes, and agricultural systems operated continuously without electricity, relying on physics, gravity, and natural forces in ways modern engineers now revisit under the banner of renewable energy and low-tech resilience, proving that complexity does not equal superiority and that systems designed to function independently often outlast those dependent on fragile networks. Perhaps the most profound medieval secret, however, lies not in any single invention or practice, but in their mindset, a worldview that accepted limits, respected cycles, and designed life around sustainability rather than endless growth, understanding intuitively that anything requiring constant external input was inherently unstable. A lesson modern civilization is learning the hard way as it struggles with energy shortages, environmental degradation, mental health crises, and chronic disease epidemics despite unprecedented technological power. Medieval people did not chase convenience at the cost of resilience. They built redundancy into daily life, using materials that aged gracefully rather than failing catastrophically, diets that adapted to seasons rather than forcing uniformity, and social systems that emphasized interdependence over isolation, while modern life has optimized for speed, efficiency, and comfort, only to discover that these qualities often come with hidden fragilities. This is why modern science feels like it is catching up rather than leading, because many of today's breakthroughs are not revolutions at all, but rediscoveries framed in modern terminology, confirming that ancient and medieval knowledge was never truly lost. It was ignored, dismissed, and overwritten by arrogance disguised as progress. And now, as evidence accumulates and crises multiply, history is quietly reclaiming its authority, forcing us to confront a reality we never expected, that the future of human survival may depend less on inventing something entirely new, and more on remembering what medieval people already understood, that true intelligence lies not in dominating nature, but in living intelligently within it. And once you truly grasp that idea, the story becomes even more unsettling, because it forces us to question not just what medieval people knew, but why we chose to forget it. As modern civilization accelerated toward convenience and speed, gradually replacing wisdom with dependency, trading long-term stability for short-term comfort, while medieval societies, constrained by reality rather than abstract theory, were forced to design lives that could endure failure, scarcity, and unpredictability. Their energy systems, for example, were decentralized by necessity, using firewood, wind, water, and human or animal labor, in ways that ensured no single point of collapse could destroy everything at once. Whereas modern infrastructure is astonishingly powerful, yet dangerously brittle, capable of lighting entire cities but collapsing instantly when fuel lines, grids, or digital controls fail, a vulnerability medieval people instinctively avoided by spreading risk across multiple simple systems rather than concentrating it into one complex network. Even their relationship with time was fundamentally different, because medieval life was structured around patience and accumulation rather than instant results. With skills learned over decades, buildings constructed to last generations, and knowledge refined slowly through repetition and observation, while modern culture obsesses over speed, optimization, and constant novelty, often discarding systems before their long-term consequences are understood, which is why so many modern innovations quietly reintroduce principles medieval people already practiced: slow food, natural building, circadian alignment, regenerative agriculture, community-based living, rebranded as cutting-edge discoveries rather than acknowledgements of forgotten intelligence. The deeper irony is that medieval people never believed they were mastering the world. They believed they were surviving within it, and that humility shaped every decision they made, from how thick a wall needed to be to survive winter, to how much land could be farmed without destroying soil fertility, to how much work a human body could sustain without breaking down. Whereas modern systems often assume limitless resources, limitless energy, and limitless human endurance, assumptions now collapsing under the weight of ecological damage, burnout, and systemic failure. And this is why the medieval secret feels so threatening today, because it doesn't promise a shiny new invention or a simple technological fix, but demands something far more uncomfortable: restraint, patience, and respect for natural limits, qualities modern civilization has been trained to see as weakness rather than strength. As research continues to pile up, from studies on passive thermal design to gut microbiome science to the psychological benefits of slower, community-centered living, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore, revealing that medieval people were not waiting for modern science to save them, because they had already built lives that worked, lives that balanced efficiency with resilience, innovation with tradition, and survival with meaning, leaving us with a final, unsettling realization that reframes everything we think we know about progress. Perhaps the greatest mistake of modernity was not that it advanced too slowly, but that it advanced too arrogantly. abandoning ancient and medieval wisdom before fully understanding it. And now, centuries later, surrounded by unprecedented technology yet unprecedented fragility, we find ourselves doing something no one expected, looking back to the medieval world, not as a cautionary tale, but as a quiet teacher, reminding us that the future we are desperately trying to invent may already exist in the past, waiting for us to finally pay attention.